Hi.
Hi. I don't know if she can.
Oh, guys, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
now I can hear you.
Beautiful. Okay. Hi. You remember me, I'm sure.
Hi.
Yeah. Hard to forget you.
Right. Well, you'll probably hear the dulcet tones of all the dogs playing. Oh, here's my friend. Say hi. Oh, say hi. There
Oh,
she,
hi, Ren.
she says hi.
Hi.
Oh, I heard you.
Hi,
Who's that?
Yeah,
Huh?
my cat's here. She's right.
Oh, good. We
Aw.
greatly encourage animal participation.
Well, my dog is downstairs right now, but I have like a chair in my living room, and she will climb up in my chair. And I was on Zoom at a doctor's appointment on Zoom, which is not my favorite thing.
Right.
But she climbed up into the chair and was sitting with me the whole time.
Oh, that's sweet. Hi, Cole.
Hi, Cole.
So we're squeezing this last class in the last day of the last week of classes.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm glad you guys could make it. I'll give you guys all a Jamie update when everyone's here, when we
Hi,
start.
Mega.
Hi, Mega.
Hello.
I don't know if I can can you see me? Yeah. Okay.
Good dogs. Good dogs. Has anyone done anything cool with animals this past week?
No.
Any fun stories? No?
No, I mean, no.
Got it. Well, something that you guys might find fun, if you guys have dogs in your lives, is that the American Kennel Club is now allowing you to earn your trick dog title via video submission. And it's like the easiest kind of titling process to do anyway, because it's, you just teach your dog, you just take videos of your dog's tricks. I mean, they have specific tricks that they want you to do, but they're pretty simple. And you could do it via video submission, and then you have your very first AKC working dog title. Feel as we may about the AKC and what they stand for and all of that, it still is true that they are the major dog sport organization in the United States. So, right. So if any of you guys are interested in doing, having something to show for your dog training, or if you have a neighbor's dog who they want trained or anything like that, look it up. It's
Do that for my dog.
What?
Said I should do that for my dog.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. It gives you something to do.
She's a puppy still.
Oh yeah, well, puppies can do it. I can't tell you how many videos
She needs it.
Yeah, these people's little puppies doing it. They're fairly simple tricks and they're low impact too. So, you could definitely do it with your puppy. But it's something to do. It's like a little achievement to have, and especially if it's a rainy day and it's tough to exercise your dog or something like that, it'll tire them out pretty good. Let's see. Gallery view, that's better. So, eventually we will probably see Jane. Hi, Jane.
Are you sure?
Hello. Hey. Cole, does your shirt just say hump?
No, it says Hump Day with the camel from the old Geico commercial. I don't know if you can see it.
No, all I see is hump.
All right, hold on. Where's Zoom? Okay.
I see. I understand.
Yeah. Sorry about that. That was really, really awkward for a minute.
No, it's all good. We all know your intentions are pure. I just wanted to
I have very strange shirts. If it's not cats, camels.
All right. Jane, will you tell me when everyone is pretty much here? Is everyone pretty much here?
I would say wait like another 3 minutes,
4:05 would probably be a good time to start. Just let anybody else trickle in.
Totally. Okay. How many are there supposed to be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 people currently.
On the class, there was a few people on the reschedule thing that said that they couldn't do Friday, but I don't know who it was. So
Okay, that's totally fine. Cool, cool. Well, oh right, I'll record it unless it's automatically recorded. It is recording. Haha, I did a good job. Hi, Keeper. What are you doing? How you doing, bud? Well, someone's home, so be ready for chaos. Oh, I should close the door. That's a smart thing to do. I'm trapping the troublemakers in with me so they can leave Hallie alone. Yeah, troublemakers meaning Ren and Caper only. They're cute though. They play enough that they tire each other out, which is good. But otherwise, they'll be running up and down the stairs and doing crazy things. Oh no, Ren sees a reflection and is worried. Thought you were smart. Oh, bud. All right. All right. Jane, what do you think?
I think we're good to start.
All right. So, hey guys, for anyone who doesn't remember me, I'm Mihaela, and I will be teaching your final class of the year because Jamie was in the hospital. She came home today, and she's resting. So she needs her rest and to not be doing crazy things. So I just want to let you know, but she is okay and she is home and all of that good stuff. But I am here. Enjoy a change of face. And of course, you know, I know it sucks to not have Jamie for the very last class. She really, really wanted to be here, but it just wasn't. Hallie and I both made her stay in bed and promised to stay in bed. So if you guys do want to continue talking to her, she loves you guys. And so, you know, if you want to email her and continue to stay in touch, she will love that. So this final class doesn't mean it's the last time that your last opportunity to talk to Jamie. She's always, as Paige, I'm sure will tell you, very happy to work with everyone. So, all right, so let's get started. Oh, hey, Alon. I was just telling everyone Jamie was in the hospital, but she's home now, but she needs to rest and everything. Hallie and I made her swear to stay in bed, even though she wanted to be here very much. So I will be teaching you guys for this last class. So let's talk a little bit, well, a lot of it, about treatment and management protocols for non-aggressive behavior issues. So just by nodding yes or no, tell me, did everyone read the document? Beautiful. Okay. So I'll go through it, and as you have questions, just unmute your mic and be like, hey, tell me about things, okay? Because I'll be looking at the document, not at you guys all of the time. So if you have a question, just speak up, and I will throw virtual candy at you. So thank you very much, and let's get started. So the first one that we always talk about first with all of the anxiety disorders is generalized anxiety disorders. And at the top, Jamie always says, remember to include all of the normal things you would from the general TMP document. So what we're going to be talking about with this TMP document is anything that's like extra special, that isn't like extra special or extra specific to this disorder or this issue that was not already covered in the general TMP document. So for example, something that's already covered in the general TMP document would be that exercise is essential, right? And so that is extra super duper true for anxiety disorders of any kind. I mean, just basically for anything, but especially for anxiety disorders, exercise, exercise, exercise. So just because I don't talk about exercise for GAD in this document does not mean you don't exercise the dog or that exercise is not essential. Does that make sense to everybody? Beautiful. So bottom line is apply all applicable things from your general TMP document and then add these extra things per disorder. So the important thing to remember with anxiety, and I'm sure Jamie has said this before, is that medication is almost always necessary when you are treating an anxiety disorder. Just like with people, there's lots of things that can help, including exercise. Oh, hold on. Don't do that. Okay, including exercise and training and all of that. But when a dog has come to the point where they have a disorder, an anxiety disorder, at that point there is a neurochemical imbalance in the brain that must be evened out. And usually the only thing that will help or jumpstart your training protocol is medication. You can sometimes make strides without medication, but sometimes improvement is just not possible without medication. So when it comes to anxiety disorders, it's just important to always keep in mind that medication is almost always necessary. I'm sure Jamie's talked to you as well about how difficult that can be to bring up with owners, because especially nowadays, people treat their dogs just like their kids. And most people don't want to medicate their children, and most people don't want to medicate their dogs. So it's something to be brought up lightly and carefully, but it is something that it's your job as the behaviorist to tell them, right? Because just because they don't want to medicate their dog doesn't mean they shouldn't. All right, so let's talk about generalized anxiety disorder. So with GAD, the dog is displaying a level and a high level of anxiety all the time, or a higher than normal level of anxiety all the time. Just like a person with generalized anxiety disorder, they're just extra all the time. And so with GAD though, there can still be triggers that exacerbate that anxiety. So like, you know, for example, me, I definitely have generalized anxiety disorder, and I'm always a little bit nah, but if I have something to do that I haven't done yet, that is a trigger that will exacerbate my anxiety and make me go extra nah. So dogs have the same things. So they will be generally anxious. So take Ren, for example. She has GAD as well because we are the same person. And she is on fluoxetine, but prior to being on fluoxetine, you know, she would walk around and pace and whine and not settle. And so she was always kind of anxious, but especially when I would leave. So she had a little touch of separation anxiety. That would be a trigger. Or when I would be getting dressed to like go running. Or if I wasn't sitting down to watch a show, I was like moving around cleaning or something like that, that would trigger excessive anxiety. So with GAD, we like to find those triggers that exacerbate the behavior and try and avoid them. So for example, with Ren, if, back when I was trying to first address her anxiety without medication, I would try and make sure I was sitting down and doing something stationary and relaxed most of the time. Spoiler alert, that didn't really do a ton, but that will, in general, if you can find and decrease the triggers for the dog, that will help lower their level of anxiety. So the following things for generalized anxiety disorder are also all taken from the general TMP. So reassurance equals praise, for example. So if a dog is walking around whining, panting, pacing, if I go, oh, Ren, it's okay, you don't have to be anxious, I'm actually telling her, oh, good job, be anxious. That's the right thing to do. So we want to ignore the anxious behavior when it's taking place. Of course, like I said, exercise is essential. You know this. 6 tricks in 6 weeks. It doesn't, right? You think, oh, does that tie directly into anxiety? And while it doesn't specifically address the anxious behavior, it addresses the relationship between the dog and the person by increasing that bond through training. It gives the dog's brain something to do that's productive, right? Tricks, behaviors, positive things other than just being anxious. And it also tires out the dog's brain. So I think probably most of us know humans that if they don't have something to do, start like biting their own fingers off and going crazy, right? yeah, Jane, me, lots of people. And you're probably finding out exactly who they are while you're in quarantine. And so 6 tricks in 6 weeks is kind of the same idea. Give the dog something to do. Give the human who it has been exhausted just watching their dog be anxious and in pain and worried all the time, give them something productive to do. And you are laying the foundation of good positive training that you can then draw on later with specific protocols. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So while it's not like directly tied into the anxious behavior per se, it is an important part of the treatment and management plan. So a really important part for a dog with generalized anxiety disorder is a low stimulation environment. Nod your head yes or no. Did Jamie talk about a low stimulation environment? No. Okay, cool. So good, I get to teach you something. So a low stimulation environment is any area that is like a safe space for the dog where they are not stimulated or very low. It's a area of low stimulation, right? So no noise or white noise, no light or low light. And it's a safe space where they feel comfortable and can relax. So think of this as like your room, right? When you were a teenager, I'm assuming. So I know when I was a teenager, my room was my safe space. I felt relaxed in there. It was like dark and emo because that's who I was. And there I had my music playing so I couldn't hear all my parents and stuff like that. I had all my posters everywhere. I had a scented candle that smelled delicious. And it was my safe space. I felt relaxed. I couldn't hear the world outside. There wasn't like sunlight to make me go, I'm a vampire. So that was my low stimulation environment. And I'm sure you guys have something like that too, right? A place that you feel happy and relaxed. My partner loves taking baths. That's his low stimulation environment. I think it's weird, but hey, to each their own. And So dogs are no different. They need a safe place to be. And so a very common low stimulation environment is a crate, right? People crate train their dogs for convenience, but if you do it right, it becomes a positive space that the dogs adore, right? I know lots of dogs who choose to crate themselves when the crate door is open. Falcon, for example, has never been formally crate trained, but he loves to go into the dog room and curl up inside a crate, and he barely fits, and he looks like a little jelly donut. It's really cute. But for him, it's his safe space. It's quiet, it's calm, it's cool, importantly for him. There's usually a fan going on in there, so there's white noise, and it makes him feel safe, and he can relax and go to sleep. So continuing to use Ren as an example, when I was trying to treat her generalized anxiety, I crate trained her to her crate, and not only was it just a wire crate that she felt comfortable in, but I also put a bed sheet over it, so it was breathable, but it basically blocked her view of everything else. And I turned a fan on low, blowing away from her, so that the white noise was there for her, but it wasn't blowing straight on her, because that would drive me insane. And so this basically blocks out all the other noises of the house, so that she can't get excited hearing like, oh, what's Otter up to? What's Keeper up to? I want to be part of it. I'm missing out. Nah. And it blocks out all of the chaos and like sights outside the crate that might be interesting or distracting. And it basically just encourages relaxation. So with dogs with generalized anxiety disorder, they tend to be very overstimulated by everything in the world. And so it's really good and really important that they have a space where they can go in, and it basically just helps their brain shut down for them. And they can go in there to go to sleep. So like for when Ren got overstimulated, I could tell, because she'd start to go heh, 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 and pacing and whining, and she'd start to like nose punch me and other dogs and everything. And I was like, oh, she's a grumpy 2-year-old. She needs to go to bed. She needs to take a nap. And I'd put her up in her crate, turn the fan on, put the sheet over it, walk away for an hour. When I took her back out after that hour, she'd had a nice nap and she was all good again. So a low stimulation environment is very important. For a dog, for owners who don't want to crate train, they could also do this for their bedroom. Ideally, it would be a bedroom with a window that does not face like the street or something where people walk by a lot, because that could obviously keep a dog kind of up and anxious and excited. So a bedroom with the curtains drawn and a fan going, and the light turned off, that would be another great low stimulation environment, if that's a place that the dog feels comfortable. And when you put your dog in their low stimulation environment, you want to put them in there with an occupier, something that will bridge the gap, right? A stuffed frozen Kong, a bully stick, a raw marrow bone, something that will allow them to self-soothe until they are tired enough or bored enough or whatever to go to sleep in that environment. Because you can't expect to just shove a dog in a crate, put everything on, and then walk away and they'll just go to sleep. Not at least at first. You want to have something that'll help them bridge the gap and pacify them. Does this make sense to you guys? Yes, no, maybe so. Awesome. Beautiful. Oh my God, that sounds like my mother. Ugh, turning into my mother. So, any questions on low stimulation environments? That's a very, very important thing to know just for life in general. That's why it never hurts to have your dog crate trained. And a lot of people don't want to crate train their dogs, but if they don't, they can use a room or something like that. Any questions on the low stimulation environment? Okay, awesome. Continuing. So, changing the channel. So, has Jamie talked about that? Yes or no? Nod, shake your head, nod. Okay, thank you. Awesome. So yeah, with anxious dogs, you want to make sure you can change the channel, right? So if Ren's pacing, panting, walking around, Maybe I give her a Kong so that she has something to do. Again, bridging that gap, helping her pacify herself and relax, because dogs can't meditate like us and go like, I'm feeling crazy right now. Take a deep breath, right? We're basically forcing them to do that by giving them something to change the channel, taking them from an anxious place to a non-anxious place. Any questions on that? Okay, awesome. So, changing the channel, bridging the gap, and occupiers, we basically just covered that. And occupiers can be used to change the channel, they can be used to bridge the gap, or they can just be used prophylactically. So for example, I didn't tell you guys this, but I sprained my ankle literally the day that Jamie went to the hospital, which was a giant bummer, but it makes sense if you think about timing and how that all works right now with coronavirus. So I sprained my ankle, and I couldn't run the dogs. Jamie was at the hospital. Hallie and I had to get creative for how to exercise, specifically the crazy ones. Yes, I'm looking at both of you, but everyone. And so I did lots of training with the dogs. I hobbled to the pond and played fetch and all of that. And Hallie walked the dogs as well. And then I stuffed Kongs with just their normal food. And we gave them to them throughout the day to equal the amount of the dog's total food. And usually dogs get fed breakfast and dinner in bowls twice a day, because we do lots of other training during the day, and they also go on the run, so by nighttime they're really exhausted. But since obviously I wasn't able to do the normal 5 to 7 miles every day, and Jamie wasn't either, because she was in the hospital, they had energy to burn. And so using these occupiers, specifically the Kongs, is basically simulating foraging for food. And it basically is encouraging them to burn energy on their meals. So I would do some training, I would do some pond stuff, Hallie would do some walks and some training. And then once we were done with all of the active stuff we were doing during the day, we'd just start to feed out Kongs. Up until it reached each dog's normal kibble amount. And so even though the dogs weren't anxious, we were feeding them out prophylactically so that they wouldn't get anxious. Does that make sense? Because basically our goal was to try and prevent all of the anxiety, which worked really well. The 2 Tasmanian devils in the house are currently sleeping in the room at the foot of the desk. So worked really well, requires some forethought, but you can use occupiers prophylactically, as well as to bridge the gap and for a safe space, and to change the channel. Make sense? Awesome. So there are a lot of trainers who now say, oh, you should never feed your dog food in a bowl or anything like that. And I think Jamie's probably told you all that. It's all up to you. You get to do what works best for you. But there are lots of people, lots of dogs who never eat their food from a bowl. They're always eating it from an occupier, all like that stuff. And there's no harm in doing it as long as your dog will stay on that occupier for the full amount of food. So yeah. No forced contact. So I remember I was there when Jamie did the no forced contact demo with you guys. So I know you know what that means. But you know, with a dog who's anxious, you don't want to be forcing them into situations because that will make them more anxious. So no forced contact. That, desensitization, and medication. So medication such as, I told you, Ren is on fluoxetine on 20 milligrams once a day. And that has seemed to make a big difference for her, which is really nice. But you can use other medications like the ones you learned about in your pharmacology document. Fluoxetine and trazodone tend to be the big 2 for anxiety disorders. But there are other ones out there if one of those doesn't work for the dogs, or if the vet for some reason wants to try like a tricyclic or something like that. So again, with GAD, it's almost always necessary, just like with humans. Humans who have generalized anxiety disorder, at least at the start, in order to get things down to a level where you can then start to direct that emotion and energy into positive, good channels, medication helps ratchet that crazy, not crazy, sorry. I talk about it, about my crazy specifically, but ratchet that energy, that anxiety down to a workable level. Because usually by the time that owners come to us, their dogs are at a point way off the spectrum, way off the workable spectrum, right? They are at the end of their rope. They don't know what to do. These dogs are usually kind of hysterical in some ways. And so usually a medication will help take that anxiety down to a level where we can then start to work with the dog and it's not just in this frazzled state. And so with desensitization, right, that would be if we were working with those specific triggers. So now I can get dressed in my running clothes around Ren without her going crazy. I didn't do desensitization specifically. I have her hold a sit stay or a down stay while I get dressed, and that works well, but I think she's still, her level of anxiety has not changed from that. She just holds the sit stay or the down stay. But let's say a trigger is more something like, you know, you're standing and cooking a meal, right? You could work with desensitization around that. Any questions on those? Medication or desensitization? Okay. And then there's additional options. So these would be homeopathic remedies, such as L-theanine, lavender oil, dog appeasing pheromone. They have lots of options out there. People are like wild about CBD oil right now. I tried all of those with Ren. CBD oil helps like a teeny bit, but not enough. That made me like not want to do medication. And so there's lots of options out there. And of course, the internet will tell you anything you want to hear. So there's as many homeopathic and traditional and herbal and non-traditional remedies as there are traditional remedies under the sun. That as long as it doesn't harm the dog, right, there's really no harm in trying it. You know, if you want to rub them down with lavender oil, be my guest, they'll probably hate you, but you can. When I was trying to treat Ren, I was like, oh, I'll put lavender oil on her chest. I did that once. She decided I had murdered her with lavender oil, and now if I take out lavender oil to put on myself, she runs away, like caper seeing a brush. It's ridiculous. So, I mean, right, that obviously stresses her out more than not putting it on her, so I don't. But, you know, a dog appeasing pheromone diffuser can't hurt. If your dog won't act like you've tortured them, lavender oil is great. CBD is fine. It's just these things have shown to be kind of more hit or miss than, say, medication and coupled with the treatment and management protocol. But especially with owners who are medication hesitant, it can't hurt to let them try this stuff. If only to have them try it not work, and then you go, all right, now how about antidepressants? After they've like tried to dose their dog with every type of CBD product. Does that make sense? But they have worked in some cases, and thunder shirts are another great example. Some people like to use them for GAD. They work sometimes, they don't work other times. Totally depends. Again, no harm in trying it if the owner has the resources to do so. All right. Any lingering questions on GAD? Beautiful. Let's move on to separation anxiety after I get a drink of water. Okay. So, separation anxiety. Jamie's told you before, it's such a hard thing to treat because it occurs in the absence of the owner, whereas GAD and aggression can occur in the absence or in the presence of the owner, so you can do that training while you're there. Separation anxiety only happens when the owner is not there. So how do you treat that? Basically, medication and successive approximations. Jamie just did a consult actually with a dog named Popcorn, who has separation anxiety, and his owners seem to be fairly reticent to try medication. So Jamie gave them a protocol to start first, and then they'll check back in with us, and we'll see how that went. And based on how that went, we can start, talking about either medication or something else, going from there. Separation anxiety is especially tough because, again, usually by the time the owners see it as a problem, the dog has escalated the behavior to a point of total hysteria, to the point where you can't touch your car keys without your dog starting to shake and pant and shiver and walk in circles. So, for example, Popcorn, anytime that he knew his owners were leaving, anytime his owners packed the diaper bag, he just starts to shake, like shiver, uncontrollably. He'll glue himself to the car. He will pant and stress pant and drool, and he's just inconsolable. And so at that point, and he won't take treats, he won't de-escalate until the owners stop going somewhere. And even then it takes him a while to calm down from that because those stress hormones are going throughout his body. So at that point, he won't take treats, he won't listen, he's hysterical, he's having a panic attack. To anyone who's ever had a panic attack, you probably know how you can't really respond to your external environment, or you can't really respond in rational ways while you are having that panic attack, right? And so with a dog with separation anxiety, you can't do anything when the dog is in that state. You can't do training, you can't, make them happy, you can't do anything to alleviate that suffering besides for stop going where you're going. And that's not always an option. So again, this is where medication is key, because medication can help take the edge off that panic attack, right? It can help make that panic attack less severe so that perhaps now you can touch your keys and Popcorn will get nervous, but he'll still take treats, right? So you can treat keys, and start that desensitization process. Medication basically de-escalates that behavior to the point where you can actually work with the poor dog on it, where they're not just in this high anxiety frazzled state and out in outer space and not paying attention to you. Does that make sense to everybody? Beautiful. Okay, so with separation anxiety, besides from medication, when you are doing the desensitization protocol, it requires a massive amount of successive approximations. So for example, right, if your dog gets set off by you grabbing your keys, your first successive approximation might just be walking by that general vicinity where you keep your keys. And even that might be too much for the dog. So it's a little bit of trial and error. But maybe, we keep our keys on a hook by the door next to the kitchen island. So if I was trying to deal with separation anxiety in a dog here, and every time I grabbed my keys, they went crazy, what I would first try to do would be to no talk, no touch, no eye contact, just walk by, walk around the island, past where the keys are kept and keep going. And not look at the dog, not touch the dog, not talk to the dog, nothing. And that would slowly, if that doesn't completely set the dog off into a panic attack, doing that multiple times a day over time will desensitize the dog to you walking by that area. Once the dog doesn't care when you walk by the keys, maybe next you just walk by and reach your hand, not even touching the keys, but just reach your hand nearer to the keys than your body is and keep walking. Again, no talk, no touch, no eye contact. Teeny tiny successive approximations. Absolutely tiny. It seems insane and ridiculous when you tell it to an owner, but at that point with separation anxiety, dogs are so sensitized, so highly alert to all of these signs that we honestly don't even know that we're giving, that these teeny tiny successive approximations are necessary. So, for example, what Jamie told Popcorn's parents to do is just to walk by the keys and just reach out, touch them. Try not even to jangle them. Just gently brush them with your finger and keep walking and not looking at Popcorn or anything. So the successive approximations in any TMP for separation anxiety are going to be numerous, repetitive, and seemingly insane. And if they seem crazy, then you're probably doing it right. And the other really hard thing about separation anxiety is that there are a zillion triggers for separation anxiety, and they differ with every dog. But think of all the things, take a moment to think of all the things that you do when you leave for any given thing. Paige, tell me what it's like. What do you do when you are getting ready to walk out the door to go somewhere?
I try to put her in the crate with an occupier first if there's
no, that's totally great. You're totally way ahead of me, but I'm not even talking about the dog. Just what do you do
just like,
when like you yourself are getting ready to go out the door?
Grab my coat and my bag and sometimes my car keys, not really right now.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
That's really it.
Right, and you probably like fill up a water bottle, and you probably check your you do this patting motion probably where you check your pockets for like your ID or your phone. You probably put real pants on. For Ren, that's a big trigger because I don't do that too often. So if I put on jeans, she goes, "Oh, we're going somewhere interesting today, aren't we?" And maybe you grab your snack. Maybe you even just stand for a minute and try to remember if you've forgotten anything. But even just that doing nothing, that standing stillness and looking off like this and going, am I forgetting anything? That could be a trigger, right? And us thinking ahead about what we need, like, oh, do I need my lunch? Do I need to bring a water bottle? Do I need to bring a jacket? Just thinking those things, or that kind of energy that we're exuding, is the I'm going somewhere energy. We can only control that to a certain extent, right? We are humans. But dogs feed off all of these things and more. That's another thing that's really difficult about separation anxiety, is all the triggers that exist, and as people, we can't possibly know all of them. Our scent probably changes when we get ready to go somewhere. I know I probably fear sweat because I'm like, ugh, humans. So, right, there's so many things that change. There's so many triggers, and basically you just try and identify as many as possible and work through that desensitization protocol that I just talked about with your million bajillion successive approximations as best as you can. Does that make sense to everybody? Beautiful. Okay. So, as the behaviorist, right, you want to find these triggers via your intake. So just like I talked about with Paige, they might not know what their trigger, or that what they're doing is triggering the behavior. So like, for example, filling a water bottle, right? Maybe filling a specific water bottle. Maybe if every morning you have your coffee on your drive into work, putting your coffee in your travel mug, that's a trigger. So they probably won't know their triggers. It's your job to kind of ferret out what things might trigger the dog by asking them questions, as well as your observations as the behaviorist. So the leaving routines are huge, and they often have more steps than what the people actually say. And there's also those imperceptible and obscure triggers that I talked about, like the change in your scent, especially if you don't like going out, you know, like Jamie and I don't like to leave the house. So when we do leave the house, we get a little stressed about it. Even if it's like going somewhere fun, like we're both going to dinner, it's still like, duh, going out in public. So that imperceptible trigger. Or accidentally touching the car keys, or just a certain way that you even look at the dog. Especially if this is a problem that's escalated, the human might start getting anxious that the dog's going to get anxious, and that might become a trigger. So there's those as well. So with all of these things, again, you can't identify every single one, but for the ones that you can, you want to do successive approximations for those. And you want to use that successive approximation training with every single trigger. So let's say you're just gonna hang out, right? You touch your keys while you're microwaving your sandwich, because that's something people do. And then you go about your business. You want to try and incorporate it as many times as possible into your day. This, as long as the dog won't become stressed about it, and this will decrease the this will increase the speed of the dog's learning and desensitization. And keep it simple until you start to see less anxiety with an item. So if touching my keys elicits a stress response from Ren, but it's not triggering a full-blown panic attack, fine, I'll keep touching my keys until I see that it no longer elicits a stress response from her. And then I can go to the next successive approximation. And of course, owners still have to leave their homes during the training process. In an ideal world, right, you wouldn't leave your home until the dog was ready for that step, but that is not a thing. So owners still have to leave their homes during the training process. And so because of that, you should try and figure out something that the owner can do with their dog while the owner is gone. So, you know, maybe that means the owner has to accept that the dog will continue to destroy the home or the room that the dog is in while the owner is gone during the training process. And so in that case, you just pick a room or an area that you're okay with the dog ruining, because maybe they've already ruined a good part of it, and just be like, once we're done with this issue, we will remodel that. Does that make sense to everyone? Beautiful. Okay. So if the dog is self-destructive, though, that's when it gets really hard, because it's one thing if the dog's destroying the house, right? If the dog's just chewing on everything that's inappropriate, but if the dog is starting to break teeth while trying to get out of the crate, or to eat drywall, or to chew its own leg, or to chase its tail to the point where the tail gets bit, that kind of thing, then it's imperative that you work with a veterinarian to help, because that dog probably needs to be sedated. Because at that point, you don't want to come home to a dog who's eaten so much drywall that it's expanded in their stomach bursts, they die, or that they've chewed half of their foot off and need to have an amputation, right? These are things that can happen, unfortunately, because separation anxiety is so difficult. So if a dog is self-destructive, you must be working with a veterinarian. Okay. And then while you're doing all these successive approximations and desensitization things, you should also be crate training the dog. And this will go much, much slower than normal crate training, because oftentimes that dog has been reverse crate trained at that point, right? They see the crate, they know, oh, I only go in the crate when my owners leave and it's horrible and I feel terrible. So you're starting from not only 0, you're starting from -50 with that dog in crate training. So you need to be crate training that dog while you're doing all of these other successive approximations, and you can't crate the dog while you're crate training it. Or you can't crate it for long periods of time while you're gone, while you're crate training it, because that will just undo all your training. Make sense? Beautiful. Something that can help is dog appeasing pheromones. So dog appeasing pheromones are super important, or can be super helpful. Some dogs don't respond to them, some dogs do. Maybe you plug in a little wall diffuser in the room that the dog's going to be staying in, and that can help them calm down sometimes. And if you want, you can look up more information on dog appeasing pheromones. They make them in those like collars now, in the like chewable things. They make them in diffusers, all sorts of things. Any questions on separation anxiety? Okay, beautiful. Go lay down, dog. Yeah. Okay, so next, Ren's just growling to herself in the corner. You're special. Good girl, shake. So the next is OCD. So OCD is basically everything you need for it is in the general TMP doc. Exercise, dog appeasing pheromones, etc. All of that good stuff, 6 tricks in 6 weeks. But it's especially important here to find triggers and avoid them. So most dogs with OCD will get triggered by periods of increased anxiety. So for example, meeting a new dog can perhaps trigger a dog who is an incessant tail chaser to then start chasing their tail, just because that's an increased anxiety situation. Someone new coming in the house, like a visitor, can cause the dog to chase their tail. In Dobermans with flank sucking, it is very often seen after they guard, right? So they bark because the mailman's coming, the mailman's coming, the mailman's coming, bark, 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 bark. Okay, the mailman's going, the mailman's going, the mailman's going. Yay, flank suck. So anytime where anxiety is increased, it's likely that can perhaps become a trigger for the OCD behavior. So find out what usually triggers these behaviors and avoid those triggers. Best way to avoid them is, if you're not going to be around, put the dog in their low stimulation environment. So for example, the Doberman can't see the mailman coming and going, therefore they won't exhibit the flank sucking. Oh yeah, I can give you guys a really weird, sad example. I house sat a house full of Dobermans in Massachusetts. It was a Doberman breeder, and she had a house full of Dobermans, and they were fine. I did not like them a ton, but they were nice. Like, they were nice dogs, but they were breeders' dogs. They were super happy, friendly, not Dobie-like. And so there was one female named Charlotte, and she was the primary breeding bitch of the woman. And this woman is she's an AKC breeder, so she's still breeding. She's breeding dogs who have DCM or who have parents who have DCM. She's breeding this dog, Charlotte, who is a blanket sucker. And blanket sucking is the same thing as flank sucking, it's just they suck on a blanket. It's very weird to watch. You can look up videos of it. It's a self-soothing behavior, but it's an OCD behavior, and they just suck on these blankets. And it is a genetic thing. And so Charlotte, this female, would suck on this blanket all the time, like just constantly. If she wasn't like getting fed, she was sucking on a blanket. And I realized that she did that because I was there, right? New person, random person. She didn't blanket suck around her owner nearly so much, but when I was there house sitting, she was blanket sucking all the time, because where the heck is her owner, right? So you find these triggers and you try and avoid them as best you can, so that you can avoid the dog rehearsing the problematic behavior. Make sense? Beautiful. So like for tail chasing, you would redirect the dog, maybe by like going, oh, do we want to play fetch, or let's cuddle, or giving them an occupier. Close the curtain if the dog is a light or a shadow chaser. For flank sucking, you could consider muzzle training. And so the problem with that is preventing the behavior, the OCD behavior, might cause another OCD behavior to pop up. So, for a human example, I wear hats because otherwise I have like an OCD thing where I like pull my hair. I mean, a lot of people have it. It's a very specific OCD thing. So I wear hats to avoid that, per people's recommendation. As soon as I started wearing hats and was unable to pull my hair, I started chewing my cuticles instead. And if I like, do something to stop chewing my cuticles, I'll start like picking at my hands and skin. It's, things pop up, right? So not always. So if you muzzle train your flank sucking dog, perhaps that breaks the habit. But you really have to watch out to make sure they're not just redirecting their OCD to another behavior. So maybe you muzzle train the dog and it can't flank suck anymore, so it starts to tail chase. Does that make sense? Okay. And because they can't flank suck anymore, which is a self-soothing behavior, this will, at least for a little while, increase their anxiety. So you have to be prepared for that, be prepared to redirect, intervene, and monitor. So anytime with OCD, anytime that you try and stop the actual OCD behavior without addressing the root cause, you really need to be careful that you are not basically just creating a new OCD behavior by stopping them from being able to do their original one. Okay. So, using occupiers, and again, feeding all meals stuffed in Kongs or food puzzles, just to increase the mental activity of the dog, give their brains something to focus on, is really, really good. So Hallie and Jamie and I watch TV most nights, and every night we all come into the living room with our different craft projects. So Hallie is an incredible artist and crafts person, so she's always like crocheting or drawing or doing something beautiful and arty. I am always making dog toys out of old t-shirts. And Jamie is always brushing one of the dogs. All of us, because we're all like very fidgety, OCD people who tend to, if we don't have something to do, just bite our hands. So we all come with things to occupy our hands and our brains so that we don't eat ourselves. So same thing with dogs, right? You want to give them Kongs and food puzzles and all sorts of good stuff to keep their brains going in a direction that is productive and not self-destructive. Make sense? Awesome. Okay. And then you're going to be doing all of the things that the general TMP tells you to do for decreasing general anxiety. And decreasing this general anxiety should decrease the OCD behavior, because OCD behavior is done to soothe anxiety. So you'll be decreasing the dog's anxiety and hopefully seeing a decrease in the OCD. So sometimes if you get a dog trainer, not a behaviorist, to try and address an OCD behavior, they will tell you to have the dog hold a down stay whenever they're doing the behavior. So like the dog is flank sucking, they hold a down stay, they can't flank suck. As we all know by now, this just increases the dog's anxiety because they want to flank suck and they can't. And that again is like muzzling the dog without decreasing the anxiety level, right? If the dog's anxiety level is increasing but they can't use their normal outlet, they're most likely to just develop a different OCD behavior to compensate for it, and it might be worse or escalated because of the increased anxiety. So it's extremely important that we do things that decrease the dog's emotional anxiety, not just train an incompatible behavior. Make sense? Beautiful. So again with the occupying mind, you can play hide and seek with humans and toys and everything, and that will help occupy the dog's mind. All right. Any questions on OCD before we go on to fears and phobias?
How much should the anxiety be reduced before introducing the downstay? Like, is there a certain level or that you could?
That's a good
observe?
question. Yeah. So you would want the downstay to be changing the channel as opposed to just bottling up the anxiety. So it's totally different for each dog. Like I can't say reduce the anxiety 50% or 25% or whatever, because also how do we measure that? But the anxiety needs to be reduced to the point where if you ask for a downstay, it is changing the channel, right? Redirecting the dog's mind, not having the dog go, I really want to flank suck, but I'm so good at obedience that I won't flank suck, but I really want to flank suck. And you'll, as a trainer or behaviorist, you'll be able to see, you should be able to tell the difference. And if you can't, then don't use that. Then just stay away from asking for obedience as an incompatible behavior. But yeah, you can use it as a redirection, as a changing the channel thing, not a prolonged don't do that behavior, just hold a long downstay instead. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Other questions?
I have a question. Sorry,
Yeah.
it took me a minute to unmute.
All good.
So you said, or no, you didn't say this. I thought of it while you were talking. Sorry.
All good.
If they're doing like an OCD behavior that's not necessarily self-destructive, like how imperative is it that it's stopped?
Well, it depends on how easy or hard it is for you to live with. So, for example, because I'm a total dog mom, but I'm in like a bajillion Doberman Facebook groups, and I can't tell you how many dogs on there blanket suck. And people post videos going, oh, it's so cute, it's a Dobie thing, it's so cute.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a Dobie thing. I find those videos really hard to watch, so I don't. If I had a dog who was a blanket sucker, it would basically just be throwing it in my face all the time how anxious the dog was. And I don't feel like I could deal with that. But a lot of people live with it and even like it. And the thing is, the dogs just destroy these blankets, and there is a risk of the dog like ingesting bits of blankets, so you have to live with that and deal with that. But if you're willing to basically have these slimy blankets around and be willing to supply the dog with enough blankets that it doesn't then go to flank sucking, because that's usually what people do in these Doberman groups. They have no idea it's an OCD behavior. They don't know that dogs can be OCD. So they go, my dog sucks blankets. And so then I took the blanket away and now it's sucking its flank. What the heck? So as long as you're willing to supply the dog with blankets to completely destroy, you're willing to monitor the dog for ingesting any of those blanket bits, and you're okay with watching your dog do these OCD behaviors, then it's not imperative that you treat it necessarily. It does mean your dog has a higher level of anxiety, but again, people live with their dogs who are totally anxious for a long time. I know, like, for me, like, I can't stand when other people are doing their OCD behaviors, even though I do mine all the time. So, for example, I couldn't live with someone with untreated OCD behaviors, but my partner lives with someone with untreated OCD behaviors. So, it's not imperative if it's not a harmful thing and if it's not escalating. If it's escalating, it's not just the OCD that's escalating. That's a sign that your dog's anxiety is increasing. Right. And in that case, even if the OCD behavior isn't currently harmful, I would say if you're seeing an increase in your dog's anxiety level, any humane owner would want to decrease their dog's anxiety, right? But if your dog isn't blanket sucking to a point or doing something else to a point that it interferes with their daily life, then yeah, as whatever you can live with, really.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Yeah, it's hard. There's no one thing. And I can't tell you, especially on Doberman groups, because they're so prone to OCD. I can't tell you how many people, like, they'll do laser pointer stuff. They'll show dogs being obsessed with light chasing and laser pointers. They'll show dogs blanket sucking and flank sucking and sucking on each other. They're like, it's so cute. And you're just like, but yeah. So Any other questions? You guys had good questions on OCD. It's a tough one.
This isn't specific to OCD, but I guess more like generalized anxiety. But I guess it could also be an OCD question. And I get that like anxiety and stuff is like a neurotypical thing, or like a neurological thing. My bad. So like, how do you? And also like dogs can pick up behaviors from other dogs. Is it possible that a dog could get like pick up a physical manifestation of another dog's like anxiety or like OCD? Like say if like there's a dog that's blanket sucking and your other dog has that one that has OCD is blanket sucking, the other dog sees that who doesn't have OCD is like, oh, that seems kind of fun. Like, can it also pick up that?
Oh yeah. Yep. They learn a lot from each other, including OCD behaviors. And a great example is so Ren, I wouldn't call it like obsessive compulsive disorder, but her with specifically silver metal bowls, every time she walks by one, she has to go boom and flip it. And like it's weird, it's annoying, and she'll keep doing it if it's there. Like she can't see a metal bowl on the ground and leave it alone. She just can't. It's not possible. And no one else played with any bowls in the house until Ren was brought into our household, and now Caper, of course, has picked up the behavior, and he won't do it to the extent that Ren does it. Like Ren literally can't be around a little metal bowl, but you know, he will every so often go like bowl, and Ren has picked up his like obsession with rocks, you know, in the ground. So Caper will play with rocks for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours in that border collie way. And Ren has decided, ooh, rocks are really cool. And so when she'll grab a rock, but she won't, like I'll have to go and grab her and bring her inside to get her up off of it, because she'll just start focusing and going, and like digging at it. It's kind of ridiculous. So again, none of those are to the level that I would say it's a disorder, but they're certainly very fixated behaviors that come from the intensity of the dogs that the two of them are, but they certainly, like if Ren decided to start flank sucking and I did nothing about it, and then Caper got anxious and he watched Ren flank suck, I wouldn't put it past Caper to learn that flank sucking was a fun thing to do. And dogs certainly can pick up OCDs from each other. And that's one of the questions is like, is the blanket sucking imprinted by the mom to the pups at birth, like once the pups are out of the womb, or is it genetic, or is the propensity for OCD genetic but specific behavior taught? So I think the most recent consensus is it's a combination of both. Like the genetics of OCD are heritable, the behaviors are learned, that kind of thing. But I think the jury's still out on that because people still don't think dogs can be obsessive. But yes, Kat, that's a really good question, and dogs definitely can learn OCD behaviors from each other. Oh, right, you see that in shelters all the time, dog shelters. A dog develops chronic spinning or leaping or chewing on themselves, and then the other dogs around that dog learn to do that as well. Pacing, spinning, wall climbing, poop smearing, stuff like that. You see that all the time, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Yep. Sad ending. Other questions? Okay, let's move on to fears and phobias. So, fears can be treated and managed and minimized and or possibly avoided. So, right, like Ren is afraid of men with beards. Great. I don't have those in my life, so we don't deal with that. But if I want to, or if Luke decides to grow a beard, then I can do the whole desensitization and training. But I also, it's not a problem for me right now. So I just avoid that issue. So if the fear or phobia is singular, so like the vacuum cleaner, you just put the dog far away whenever you're going to be engaging with the fear or phobic item. So you just put the dog away while you vacuum the downstairs, and then you put the dog downstairs while you vacuum upstairs. Problem solved. It's like not worth going through a whole training protocol when you can just do that. You know, so like with Ren and men with beards, I don't really feel like doing that training right now because I don't care. But that would change if Cole and I were to become roommates, right? I would then do that training protocol. Or yeah, exactly. Or if, you know, I was going to move to a city where we would be around a lot more humans who are of different looks and stuff. So, you know, that's nice and easy. But, well, and you can also, it would be good if you're doing that to put the dog in their low stimulation environment while you do your vacuuming thing. So ideally they don't even know you're vacuuming, so you don't trigger that whole panic attack that they get. So unfortunately, for a fear that you can't avoid, they require slow, systematic desensitization, kind of similar to what would be used for body handling aggression or for resource guarding. So you could refer back to those treatment and management plans, and just basically replace, like, you know, touch the food with move a little bit closer than the critical distance from, I don't know, the motorcycle. Or if a dog's afraid of horses, although I think it's good for them to have a healthy fear of an animal that can kick their brains out, but you know what I mean. So it's fairly similar to body handling, successive approximations, etc. For phobias, you really can't, like, they're phobias. Just like with people who are scared of spiders, you can't reason with them. So it's not like you can do, thank you. It's not like you can do that easy TMP for them. So like thunder phobia, you can't just do successive approximations for that. And so, unfortunately, with phobias, while you can often reduce the anxiety around them, you can't completely remove the phobia. So the dog will still never enjoy thunderstorms, but you can make it easier on them. So a lot of people put their dogs on medications and thunder shirts and CBD oils and stuff like that for thunderstorms. And unfortunately, while the dog still does not enjoy the thunderstorm, their fear is greatly reduced, which is great. But phobias are tough because they are a completely unreasonable thing. You know, it's not like you can say, dude, it's a spider, it's fine. You know, even with humans, that doesn't work. It can't work with dogs who don't understand. And with phobias, even though you can't ever completely eliminate the phobia, it's still always worth working to reduce the fear, right? Like if my dog is scared of thunderstorms, and they can either be completely petrified peeing themselves in the bathtub because they are so scared, or they can be not having a great time hanging out on the couch with me while having had like 200 milligrams of trazodone, I'd choose that one, right? They're still scared, but they're less scared. And so that's like the humane thing to do. And as always, use items for the general TMP for fears and phobias. So for example, if I know a thunderstorm's coming like later in the day, I might take my dog for like a 7-mile run as opposed to the 5-mile run, so that they're extra tired, because that will help at least a little bit, right? Make sure they're extra tired, or extra trained, or extra comfy, that kind of thing. Or make sure your DAP diffuser is plugged in, or that you've rubbed yourself down with lavender oil and smell like patchouli. I don't know, whatever you want. But you can use all of those general items in the same way for fears and phobias. Speaking of thunderstorms, it looks like there's about to be one. Luckily, no one in here has thunderstorms, but lentil, I think. So, any questions on fears and phobias TMP? All right, beautiful. Lastly, we're going to talk about psychosis. So, Jamie's told you all about psychosis. It's really hard because it's that whack-a-mole issue. And because, right, you treat one issue and then another one pops up. You treat that issue and another one pops up. And unfortunately with psychosis, the likely end result that's humane is probably euthanasia. However, in spite of the likely end results of euthanasia, it doesn't mean you shouldn't work with the dog, right? Because these owners love the dog. They care if they want to work and they want to continue working, right? It's going to be you or someone else, and at least you're going to be using humane, good methods and giving that dog at least whatever quality of life it can have while it's alive. So, despite the probable end result, you should work with the dog indefinitely or until it's no longer safe or humane for the dog or the owners, right? So maybe even though the dog still has some quality of life, the owners aren't leaving the house anymore ever or something like that. That's not humane to them. So with all of these issues, you also want to be thinking about what is fair and humane to the owners as well. You are there for the dog, but you are also there for the people. So with psychosis, right, there is no one TMP because psychosis manifests in all of these disorders that we've talked about, all of these behavioral issues that you've learned about over the years, plus more, right? As psychosis is not one set of behaviors itself, it's just the existence of a plethora of them, plus that whack-a-mole principle. So your TMP will be shaped not by the fact that it's psychosis, but it will be shaped by each one of the specific problematic behaviors that pops up as a result of psychosis. So like, for example, your psychotic dog is resource guarding. You do a TMP for resource guarding, you fix that, now they have OCD behaviors. You do your TMP for OCD behaviors, you fix that, now they are biting children. You do a TMP for biting children, and you go from there, that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Beautiful. So basically, you just want to find ways to make this dog as comfortable as possible because their brain is crazy. Their life is crazy. So you just basically, especially because the end result is euthanasia, most likely, you know, you can go for medications that might not be prescribed for long-term use. So for example, if a medication, like maybe if steroid helps the dog feel more comfortable physically and mentally, even though that's not great for long-term use, and I wouldn't use that in a dog that just has an anxiety disorder, because it's psychosis and that dog is not likely to live for as long as a normal dog. That's, you know, the length of, or the shortening of their life is less of a priority than their immediate comfort. Does that make sense? So, you know, you might have them prescribed medications that would not normally be prescribed for a dog of that age for long-term use because of the fact that long-term doesn't really exist with psychotic dogs. And you want to ease and remove the things that make the dog worse when possible. So again, with psychosis, triggers will change and crop up and stuff. But as you see triggers and understand them, try and remove them or ease them when possible. If not possible, fine. But if it is possible, do it. And so then you can find things that comfort the dog and use them as much as possible. So for example, you want to, this is very important where they have their safe space, a crate or a bed or a room that is really comfortable for the dog, their favorite blankets, their favorite toys. And you want to make sure that, like, you know, maybe if specific household members aren't, make the dog more anxious, you have those household members ignore the dog. If the dog has a specific type of food bowl that they like to eat from, then use that one. Feed the dog wherever it's the most comfortable in, and do its favorite types of exercise. So if the dog prefers to swim, do that unless you can't. If the dog prefers to play chuck it, do that unless you can't. Just basically, it's kind of like, what can I do to give this dog the best quality of life right now? because who knows what tomorrow brings with psychosis. So as long as you have the dog and it's safe and humane, try and do what will make it happiest for that day, because tomorrow's just not guaranteed and things can change really quickly. Does that make sense? Okay. So, and then of course use items from the general TMP as needed. So exercise is essential, etc., etc. And yeah, you just want to work with the dog and be honest with the owners. And as long as they want to continue working, you should continue to be there for them. Okay. Any questions on that? All right. So Jane and Jamie will be talking to you about your exam. I didn't know if you wanted to say anything about that now, Jane, or if that's something you guys will be talking about later.
I can talk about it right now.
Beautiful. Go for it.
Okay, so I know that not everybody is here, but I didn't look at the form, but right before this, but can I just get like a thumbs up or like a head nod because I'm assuming that everybody here is planning on taking it on Zoom? Or is there anybody here that's planning on taking it on Blackboard?
Well, you said that we'd had to attend at least 2.
We haven't really decided that yet, but for now, like if you want to take it on Zoom, for right now, it's like you can take it on Zoom if you want to.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Which we're pretty sure is what's going to happen in the long run. I think that everyone's going to be able to take it on Zoom if they want to.
Okay.
So for the Zoom one, it'll be on Wednesday at 4. I think we're going to do it at the same time, like at 4 o'clock, because if people are taking it on Blackboard, then that one is going to be open at 7:30, and we can't really be 2 places at once if we're going to be there to be answering emails and stuff for the people who are taking it on Blackboard, which as of now, I think it's only like 1 person. But so the way that it'll work is that Jamie and I will be on Zoom, and then everybody will be there. We'll split everybody up into their breakout groups, and then they'll like discuss their case study that we'll email to like one of the group members. And these group members will be decided like beforehand. We're going to split everybody up. We're going to assign everybody a group. And then you'll go out into breakout groups, which is something that you can do on Zoom. I don't know if anybody's done them before, but and then you'll do the case study. You can call one, or before you like finish and move on to the first part. So it's a case study, and there'll be like a bunch of different questions for each one. And we'll like come over, confirm that like you have like the first part of it right, so that like the rest of your thing isn't way off. And then you'll answer the questions and read them aloud to the whole class, and then we'll go from there and grade and stuff like that. So it's going to be, again, at 4 o'clock on Wednesday. I'm pretty sure that's the time that we're going to do. I'm like 99% sure that that's right. And then so it's obviously like it's a group effort. It's open note. Like you can look at all the stuff that you have down. It'll be, again, like a case study about like mostly about treatment and management. And then if you're taking it on Blackboard, there'll be a lockdown browser so that it's just written notes. It'll be like open note, but not open resource, if that makes sense. And it won't be collaborative on Blackboard. So it's kind of up to your discretion whether or not you want to do like a group work exam, or like if you want to take it solo, that's up to you. But like Zoom is encouraged because it is fun to work in groups, and you'll kind of get feedback from me and Jamie in terms of like your answers. Yeah, I think that's about it. If there's like scheduling problems, like we can try and work something out and like shift the time around a little bit. Like if there's work, or like you have another exam at like 4 o'clock on that Wednesday, like obviously that's something that you can't really avoid. So we'll try and work something out with that. I'll probably send out another survey and see like if like Wednesday is not available for somebody. So like you don't have to worry about telling you that now. That'll be like a later thing. But is anybody here interested in like a study session on Zoom at all? Yes, no. I mean, if no is a totally fine answer, like I know that this is like very like like a comprehensive thing. So it's like I know that for USD I'm doing one, so I just figured that I would offer. So like we're kind of iffy on it. I can do it, and then it can also be through email. You can email me any questions that you have about material or layout.
Paper says hi. Oh,
Paper.
never mind.
But yeah, that's basically all that there is about the exam. Again, it's like open note, so it's really nothing to stress out about. It'll probably be if you have any exams. I know that I have 4 next week, but if you have other exams, this will be the easiest out of all of them. So don't
It is
stress about it.
it is designed to be a collaborative
Yeah.
group thing, but not like one of those painful, horrible group projects. So,
Yeah, no,
just so you know.
a very simple exam.
Yeah.
I have a
Any
question.
questions on that? Oh yeah.
Are like all the groups gonna get the same case, or are we all getting our own cases?
No, each group will get a different case, so that way it'll be like more individual, and they're like fun stories. So it's something interesting to read too.
Cool. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on layout or information about anything that we've covered like at all since we've been online? Where's Ren?
She's right there with her hair on paper.
Oh, I see her feet. Oh my goodness, they're so cute. They're like a match made in heaven. They're perfect pair. They're two peas in a pod.
They love each other because they're crazy. Yeah, I've been spending most of my time just trying to tire the two of them out while sitting down. I've taught them to play tug with a really long tug toy that I made where I grip it in the middle and each one of them has an end. That works really well. And I can even do like bicep curls with it too. So
wow.
It's like a good body workout too. But yeah, they're a fun crazy pair. All right, well then thanks for coming everybody.
I have actually a quick question before we wrap up.
Totally.
So how would you approach the owners and tell them that their dog has a psychosis disorder?
Yeah, well, it would really depend on the owners, right? So it would depend, like if also you've probably done a couple consults before you know it's psychosis. So you probably know those owners pretty well at that point.
Right.
Because there's no way you diagnose psychosis the first time around, most likely, unless you are Jamie. Because she's had a bajillion years of experience. But for the most part, you've done a bunch of consults with them. You know, at that point, maybe you're on your second or third behavior issue where you're like, whoa, okay, this is like the third thing that's popped up. Maybe we need to start thinking about psychosis. So then you would start telling them about, from there you would start telling them about like what the symptoms of psychosis are, what that looks like in dogs, why you think that dog might fit the label of psychotic. You wouldn't bring it up until you were really, really sure, because it's a really scary and really dark diagnosis, right? It's not like, oh, your dog's going to be great, it's going to be fine. So if you think that, wait to tell them until you're definitely sure, because you don't want to bring it up and then scare them, make them really sad and depressed, and then be like, oh, just kidding. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's a tough one. It's a really tough one, especially tough because some people are like, dogs can't be psychotic, but right? But yeah, really good question.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Sad that we're not doing this in class. This is the day that we would have brought pizza for everybody for snack.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
We've gotten some.
We could order like one slice of pizza to everyone's house.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. $8,000 approximately. Not. But yeah, eat something delicious in our honor. And Jamie says hello and that she loves you all and that she's so sorry she couldn't be here, but she will most likely, she might see you for the final. And of course, like I said, you know, it's Jamie. Of course she wants to be in touch. So if you feel like you haven't gotten enough Jamie time, which I totally know how that feels, if you feel like you haven't gotten enough Jamie in your life, always reach out and email her. She loves to hear from her students. It's her fave. All right. Thanks, guys. I will talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.